We're ready.
Thank you all. I apologize, I'm a minute late. I had a previous engagement at Met Cali Elementary School. I would like to call today's meeting for the Nevada Department of Transportation, August 9th, 2021 to order. If I could ask the clerk to take the roll, please.
Governor Steve Sisolak.
Here.
Lieutenant Governor Kay Marshall.
Here.
Controller Catherine Byrne.
Here.
Member Virginia Valentine.
Here.
Member Judson Kell.
Here.
And member Steve McSwaggles.
Here.
Governor, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Moving on to item number 2 is public comment. This is the first time set aside for public comment. Anyone wishing to address the board on any item on today's agenda. Items on the agenda, please step forward, identify yourself for the record, and comments will be limited to 3 minutes. Let's start in Carson City. Do I have any public comment in Carson?
Governor, we have no public comment in Carson.
Do I have any in Las Vegas? Excuse me?
There's no public comment.
Okay. Seeing none, I will move on to item number 3, consideration of approval of the July 12th minutes. Do I have a motion on the minutes?
Motion to approve the July meeting minutes, please.
We have a motion to approve the minutes. Is there any discussion on that motion? Seeing and hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Somebody say something?
Oh, abstains, Kevin.
We've got an abstain from Director Byrne. Moving on to item number 4, receive the director's report.
Thank you, Governor. While DJ pulls it up so we can see it, I will go ahead and get us started. As you mentioned, today is the first day of school. Next slide, DJ, is the first day of school, which means in Clark County, many school districts across the state are welcoming students back after summer break and after what's been an extended time from home during the COVID pandemic. Many schools haven't had significant in-person attendance in the last year and a half, and as kids return to the classroom, we need to be cognizant of their presence near schools, walking and biking. We encourage drivers, pedestrians, and students to all be safe in the school zones, and we have launched a school zone safety campaign spearheaded by our Safe Routes to School program. You may see roadside banners up in select school locations statewide, reminding drivers that it is illegal to pass in a school zone. Other banners remind drivers it is illegal to make a U-turn in a school zone. We also ask that drivers slow down and obey the crossing guards. Be aware of the neighborhoods that surround schools as well. For more information on school zone safety, visit bicyclenevada.com. I have a crash here that I could talk to you guys about today. I'm not going to. I'm just going to move on. But I got our weekly report that I get on crashes, and 7 people lost their lives just this weekend alone on our roads. It is terrible. It breaks my heart for everyone that's involved, and it's just one of those reminders we have to be safe when we drive. And yeah. All right, next slide, DJ. So there's been some national or natural emergencies that have happened over the last month that I thought I'd just let you know how we responded or helped in the response. There have been significant fires up in northern Nevada and floods throughout the state. Our highway maintenance team quickly set up closure points for the Tamarack fire and repaired fire-ravaged wooden guardrail posts and guardrail beams following the progression of the fire so that 395 could be reopened as soon as Incident Command deemed it safe and all utilities were repaired. We want to recognize the firefighters and other first responders who with us responded to the fire. We know, Governor, you were able to recognize them in person last week. In District 1, we experienced significant flooding that impacted our highways in Nye, Esmeralda, Mineral, and Clark counties. And we recognize our Las Vegas and Tonopah maintenance teams for being highly responsive and going beyond to respond and keep our highways safe for the traveling public. Nevada Highway Patrol assisted in responding to the many road closures and update notifications to Las Vegas roads. We thank our maintenance staff and our administrative staff who set up highway closure points to keep the traveling public safe during the floods. In the middle slide there, you can actually see the middle picture there. That's cleanup of a major landslide along US 93. It took us a day and a half to clear. Yeah, it was intense. And rain, we've seen heavy rain in the Elko area causing multiple slides in the Lamoille Canyon and several state routes. There have been reports of substantial damage to the Lamoille Canyon scenic byway, which isn't ours, but we participate with the Forest Service in helping as much as we can to get the road open. We actually helped open the road on the first night on Friday, 2 weekends ago. We helped open the roads for people to get out. Unfortunately, more people went in, and there were 9 month slides reported the next day, and I think we lost portions of the road. So we're hoping and being responsive and helping to make sure anyone who is in the canyon can get out safely. Next slide. Sustainable funding. I've mentioned AB 413 to you before. Last month, we launched our advisory working group. It was basically a virtual just meet and greet for 2 hours, where we elected our chair. Member Valentine will be our chair on the advisory working group, and Vice Chair Harsh will decide. Tomorrow will be our second meeting. It will be our first substantial meeting. It is an all-day in-person meeting divided between our location here in District 1 and our Carson City headquarters. The study will offer funding recommendations amid a $530 million annual state transportation funding shortfall. We have a consulting team that's helping us in the advisory group of nearly 30 members representing business, government, energy, transportation sector, labor, and other organizations. The group will study the multimodal transportation needs of the state and recommend funding options that include provide long-term financial sustainability for our system, including the state highway fund, while also taking into account the needs for social and user equity and the imperative to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from the transportation sector. They will also consider the role that land use and smart growth strategies can play in transportation costs, reducing emissions, and improving system efficiency and equity. The final report will be submitted before December 31st next year. Next slide, please. Speaking of funding shortfalls and exciting funding news, the bipartisan Senate negotiators reached an agreement on major issues in the $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill that has been in talks all summer, and a procedural vote to advance the plan took place last week. We're excited. It's not done yet. There's a lot of more discussions and votes to occur before it will be out, but should it get out in its current state, over the 5-year period, the bill will propose a roughly 25% increase in federal highway funding, a substantial increase, which is great news. Based on the proposed funding formula we've seen, a total of about $2.5 billion for federal aid highway apportion programs will come to Nevada, in addition to another $225 million specifically for bridge replacement and repairs, and $38 million for new EV infrastructure programs. And that's outside of any discretionary grants that we may be able to apply for and receive, and we've been successful on. So we're excited. We're working with our team to help get that across the finish line to the extent that we can from here. Next slide, please. I normally end on this slide, but I have a couple personnel slides after this. What's been approved so far this year, 3689 job years have been supported through our program so far this year. On this agenda, another 72 for a total of 3,761 job years supported by this program through this point this year, should everything get approved. Next slide. I wanted to share with the board, if you hadn't seen already in the media, we recently lost a critical team member. Tony Illia passed away. Tony started with NDOT in 2014, and he served as our public information officer and our primary spokesperson for Southern Nevada. He has been on the news all over for that entire time in Southern Nevada. During his time, he worked closely with hundreds of NDOT team members, members of the media, and local stakeholders to share important transportation updates and represent the department positively in countless local media, interviews, and community meetings. His tireless work ethic and upbeat attitude made NDOT a better place to work. He will be sorely missed, and I've heard from so many members of the public and the media who have talked about how he would reach out to them with stories that might be of interest, whether or not it was a big story or just something, a little nugget. And he was always willing to answer the questions. He truly will be missed. And on behalf of our executive leadership team, I offer deepest condolences to Tony's family, friends, and our entire team. And then a bit of good news. We once again have a full executive leadership team at NDOT. We are pleased to announce the appointment of Sajid Sularia as NDOT's new Assistant Director of Engineering. In the role, he'll oversee all project delivery divisions, including design, project management, hydraulics, structures, location, right-of-way, and the construction division. Sajid has been a member of our team for 18 years. He's gone through our NDOT rotational engineering program where he started, and he's also served in our hydraulics division and managed our statewide bridge scour program before becoming a project manager in our project management team, where he currently leads phase 1, the SBX project in Reno. Sajid has strong partnerships with the engineering industry throughout the state. He holds a Bachelor's of Science in Civil Engineering from the UNR and is a registered PE in Nevada. So please help me welcome Sajid to his new position. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. I don't know if we have any comments. I just have two briefly as it related to the fires up north. The mudslides are anticipated to be severe on the side of the mountain. When you see them, it's just absolutely devastating to see a whole side of a mountain burn down. And I know we're going to get mudslides as a result this fall. So we're going to need, obviously, to be prepared for that. And secondly, when you talked about school zones, the PSAs you're putting out and public pronouncements and whatnot. This is a particularly difficult year. A lot of these kids have not dealt with school zones for almost 2 years. They didn't have to deal with this last year. Their attention span or recollection is sometimes impacted for that because you can see when I was out there this morning walking, not even paying attention. So we've got to be extra cautious this year as it relates to school zones and making sure that all the kiddos are okay as they get to school and get home from school. So do we have any comments on the director's report? Anybody? Anybody up north have any comments on the director's report? Okay, moving on to item number 5, consideration approval agreements over $300,000.
Members of the board, we have 5 agreements for your consideration in this agenda item. The first is for HDR Engineering, an amendment to specifically help us with funding in-depth research into critically underrepresented communities and how we can better ensure our project communications are sufficiently reaching them and are tailored to the needs of those populations. The second agreement.
Well, let's take them one at a time, if we
Okay.
could. Do we have any questions on the first one? We have a motion. We have a motion for approval on 5.
5.1.
5.1. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Moving on to 5.2.
The second one is for CA Group. It is an amendment to CA Group to help provide consulting support during design and construction of the Tropicana Interchange Reconstruction Project. It is an amendment extending their existing agreement to move from procurement through construction administration.
Okay, do we have any questions on 5.2?
Yes, Governor, this is Lieutenant Governor Kate Marshall.
Go ahead.
I'm concerned because this is basically looks like we are more than doubling the original amount. The original agreement amount was 7.7. We're now at 15.1. It just seems to me that doing these kinds of things through amendments doesn't allow the board to provide proper perspective and insight, and we end up approving them in these kind of, step-by-step ways, and then pretty soon we're spending a lot more money than we originally anticipated.
Governor?
Please.
Yes. Thank you, Member Marshall, for your comments. I'm actually going to defer to Cole Mortensen to help address the comment, as this is a typical path for projects on our design build procurement projects. Cole?
Yeah, good morning. For the record, Cole Mortensen, Deputy Director. When we have a contract like this one, it's really unknown upfront what the overall costs may be. We started off with CA Group doing the environmental process for us, and through the environmental process, of course, the no-build alternative is still possible. So we want to make sure that we have the funding available for that portion of the process, and once we actually have a preferred alternative, then we step into the design phase. In this case, we did a preliminary, I forget the acronym. Anyway, we evaluated the project itself to determine whether or not it was in our best interest to do design bid build, or potentially CMAR. In this case, the design build methodology was chosen. So at that point in time, we amended so that they could help us through design build procurement. And then once the design build procurement is complete here, this is that portion to go through construction. And part of the reason that we stick with the same consultant is because they are privy to information that other firms aren't. And so when you go out on a design build procurement, really the other firms are the ones teaming with the contractors to make it a competitive process. So we really kind of have to go through a step-by-step process in this case to make sure that we're proceeding in the best interests of the state. And so it really kind of is unknown in the beginning. And as we progress through, then we have a better understanding of what's going to be needed in the future. So that's why it's done in phases like that.
This particular agreement was started before most of us were on the board or part of the team. In the future, when we have agreements like this, we'll try to make sure that the board understands what the possible path of that agreement may be moving forward and where we see amendment opportunities. This should be the last amendment as it gets us through construction.
Lieutenant Governor?
Yes, thank you. I appreciate both what Director Cole and Director Swallow have said. And I will take my further questions outside the meeting. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions on 5.2? Seeing and hearing none, do I have a motion?
I'll move for approval of line item.
We have a motion for approval. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Motion passes. Lieutenant Governor Marshall voting no. Next item.
The next item, 5.3, is an amendment for Lexicon Consulting to extend the consulting support to assist our department in activities related to our federal highway, the administration of our federal highway Title VI program through fiscal year 2024.
Do we have any discussions on this one? Do I have a motion?
I'll move to approve.
We have a motion for approval of line item 3. Any discussion? Hearing and seeing none. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Are there any opposed? Motion passes. Number 4.
Item 5.4 is for Horrocks Engineering. It's an amendment to help them assist us with our public involvement consulting services, our external communication project and process. This will extend their agreement through on an on-call basis through 2022. Primarily, Horrocks Engineering helps us on our smaller projects, our mill and fill projects, our 3R projects throughout the state to help us with the public communications. It has been a new effort that we established a couple of years back when we realized that we were having challenges with the adjacent communities. And so this has been a successful program we would like to amend to allow them to continue through 2022.
Okay. Do we have any questions on this one? Do I have a motion?
I'll motion to approve item 4.
We have a motion to approve 5.4. Any discussion? Seeing none. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Last one.
Item 5.5 is for CEEC, Creative Engineering and Environmental Consulting. This is an agreement to augment our construction crew in performing testing, inspection, and administration of the ongoing contracts for the seismic retrofit and bridge deck rehabilitation of the downtown Las Vegas viaducts and ramps.
Okay. Any discussion on this one? Seeing none. Do I have a motion?
For approval of line item 5.5.
We have a motion for approval of 5.5. Any discussion? Seeing none. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Okay. Next item.
Agenda item 6 is an information item only for the board. It's the agreements and contracts that have been approved in the month since our last board meeting.
Do we have any question on any of these approvals? Okay, moving on.
Agenda item 7 is consideration of approval of legislative approved procurement of new equipment. The request is for 8 new bucket loaders to be distributed throughout the district as noted in the board.
Do we have any questions on this one? I had a discussion. I appreciate Director Swallows filling me in on this one, and I've been assured that we have policies in place that this will not happen again, where we miss equipment and it's not included in the legislative allocation. So, any discussion on this item? Do I have a motion?
I'll move to approve line 7.
We have a motion for approval. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Item number 8.
Item number 8 is information item only. Assistant Director of Planning, Sandra Rosenberg, has a brief presentation to go over our annual work program and STIP. Sandra?
Good morning, Governor, members of the board. Sandra Rosenberg, Assistant Director for Planning. For the record, this item is to provide information on the draft 2022 annual work program and the statewide transportation improvement program update and amendment. Next slide, please. Each time we update our program, I think it's important to reiterate the overall process and factors that we consider, including statewide goals and performance measures, financial forecasts, funding distribution, and how we select and implement projects. And then we also continually measure our performance to see how we're doing and adjust as needed. Next slide, please. As a reminder, the One Nevada Transportation Plan and process established 6 goals as shown in this pie chart. Each goal includes specific criteria that are weighted, and each project is scored on each criteria. Cost is then factored in to give a relative value for cost and ranking of each project. And we continually revise or enhance how we measure these goal areas. And most recently, we've added a measure for equity and enhanced our measure for greenhouse gas emissions. Other factors are considered in harmonization, such as project readiness, specific funding eligibility, performance targets, and geographic distribution. Based on the rankings and harmonization factors, we establish a listing of projects per year for the next fiscal year and the following 3 years. Next slide, please. It does get a little bit confusing with the various different state and federal requirements we have for our programs and projects. So what I show here is our various different elements of our program of projects, including the annual work program, which we will bring back to the board next month for approval. That's our anticipated projects that will be obligated or started next fiscal year, and that is a state requirement. In addition, we have a statewide transportation improvement program. That's the federal requirement that has all federally funded or regionally significant projects, and that's for 4 years. In order to match those 4 years with our work program and the STIP, we have what's called the short range element, and that's years 2 through 4. The annual work program and the short range element, as well as the long range element, include all those projects that are anticipated to be delivered by NDOT, including everything from small district betterment projects to major federal large projects. And the STIP does not include some of the smaller state delivered projects, but it does include locally delivered federal projects. All of those can be found on our eSTIP website through the NDOT website with different tabs. And if you have any questions, of course, you can contact us at any time. Next slide, please. So looking at our anticipated distribution of projects that will be obligated next year, these are the different types of projects that we have categorized. You will see a fairly good balance between new construction and preservation. As our state continues to grow, we want to balance preserving our existing assets with responding to growth and economic needs of the state. Next slide, please. Always of interest is our geographic distribution. So this is the anticipated percentage of funds allocated to each county throughout the state for our draft work program for fiscal year 2022. Next slide, please. Then we look at the entire 4-year program. So the numbers go up, but the distribution looks fairly similar. Again, a good balance between preserving and maintaining our assets. Next slide, please. Again, the geographic distribution anticipated for the 4-year program across the state. Next slide. And since geographic distribution is often the most asked about a harmonization factor, we felt it was important to share with you some of the factors we use in considering a reasonable distribution. Annual obligation amounts will vary from year to year as projects start. And we do not have a specific target distribution, but these are some of the factors we look at, including the majority of population being in Clark, but the majority of our lane miles that we need to maintain outside of the urbanized area. We also look at revenue generated in the different areas of the state, as well as vehicle miles traveled. So you can see the variance in that information that we use to consider as we look at what's a reasonable distribution across the state. Next slide, please. Another factor that we often overlook is the federal funds that go directly to the metropolitan areas. So large metropolitan areas receive sub-allocation of federal funds as required by the authorization bill. There's a number of different categories, but primarily a program called the Surface Transportation Block Grant. of which the large metropolitan areas receive a sub-allocation of that. And these are the numbers for fiscal year 2021. This does not include additional amounts for COVID relief funding that each of the metropolitan areas receive in addition to this. Also, NDOT receives money in a program called Congestion Mitigation and Air Quality, or CMAQ. Those funds can only be spent in areas of non-attainment and maintenance for air quality. Currently, those areas are only Clark and Washoe County. So NDOT voluntarily distributes those funds to RTC of Southern Nevada and RTC of Washoe. Southern Nevada gets 80% of those funds each year, and Washoe gets 20%. And those are the amounts shown there. So as you can see, in addition to the distribution we showed previously, these monies are on top of that, and those are not in those distribution because these funds are delivered by those local agencies. So those show up in what's called the regional TIPs, Transportation Improvement Programs, and get included in the SIPs as those are approved. Next slide, please. I think that's it. So we anticipate both our STIP amendment and our annual work program being available for public review and comment beginning next week for a minimum of 7 days, and we can extend that if requested. We'll bring this information back next month for approval of the annual work program, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Do we have any questions for Director Rosenberg?
Yes, Lieutenant Governor Kate Marshall.
Go ahead, Lieutenant Governor.
Thank you. First off, thank you. How do you anticipate if NDOT gets additional ARPA funds, the infrastructure bill passes, how do you anticipate incorporating that, and how does that affect your priorities?
So again, Sandra Rosenberg for the record, we don't anticipate that affecting our priorities, except in the case of new programs. So we'll have to look at the eligibility requirements and see which projects and programs we have that are eligible for any new programs in the bill. Otherwise, our One Nevada process really does a good job of prioritizing all our needs based on the goals set by the department. What the bill will do, if passed, is sort of move the line down in terms of how many projects we can afford to fund each year. So we will relook at our listing of identified projects. In addition, our planning team is working very hard to identify needs on the system that we may not be aware of yet, using a data-driven process to look at things like safety, travel time reliability, equity needs, access to communities. So we're really diving into what are the needs that we may not hear about. In addition, each year we work with all of the counties across the state to have them help us identify what their priorities are. And all of those go through this One Nevada process to prioritize and then harmonize based on funding eligibility. So we'll just continue that process, but hopefully be able to fund more each year and get those projects ready and out.
Thank you, Governor. May I ask a further question?
Yes, of course.
So given that the emphasis on a lot of the federal money coming in is on recovery and resiliency, how does that impact what we're doing? So for example, if what you're trying to do is to facilitate tourism, or if what you're trying to do is to facilitate workforce being able to get to work in a easier, more timely manner, how does that impact then if what you're trying to do is to make it so that the North doesn't burn up? How does that impact your planning? Because I don't know that we have necessarily sat down and said, well, the way we want to construct our roads is to come back from COVID, to be stronger, more resilient after a pandemic, to make sure that in the next pandemic there are issues that we don't have. So how does that come into your planning?
So as I mentioned, we're continuously working on new criteria. We're working with states across the country on how we're measuring that, how we should invest. We're also working across the department. We have a number of experts in different fields, including, from pavement to environmental. How do we better factor in that variety of needs But we do think that our 6 goal areas cover much of that, but we're just working on how do we get better data or better information to refine those priorities. But some of the things you're mentioning, foster sustainability is something we're looking at, and there's a specific criteria on resilience. So we can look at if we need to, enhance the scoring on that, make that worth more of the percentage. But we are looking at resilience, we're looking at environmental risk. And then in terms of, people getting to work and whatnot, that's covered in connecting communities, where we look at equity, access to community destinations, multimodal access, and project connectivity. So we're starting to map out the different resources along with where people live to make sure there's adequate paths to their destinations.
Thank you. Thank you, Governor.
Thank you. Do we have any further questions for Director Rosenberg? Any up north? Any down here? Okay, we'll close item number 8, move on to item number 9, public comment. This is the second time set aside for public comment. Anyone wishing to address the board on any item, please step forward, identify yourself for the record, and comment to limited to 3 minutes. Do we have anyone up north?
We do not, Governor.
Okay, do we have anybody in Southern Nevada? Mr. Wellman.
Governor, board members, unfortunately, Bill Wellman, for the record, with Las Vegas Paving. I'm here to speak today on the Tropicana Avenue Design Build project. 2 days following last month's board meeting.
Hold on just a minute. Can you hear up north?
Governor, we can hear, but we don't have any image. We only have an image of the stopwatch.
Okay. That's all you get. So if you can stop the clock, that's all you get. Sorry, it's a stopwatch. Okay. Go ahead. Thank you.
So unfortunately, we were notified that our proposal, one of 3 that NDOT received, was rejected and disqualified for including impermissible deviations, which we had acknowledged with NDOT in one-on-one meetings and discussed at length some very unique innovations, which that's what the design build is for. NDOT uses design build to find those innovations and hopefully save some money or find better ways to do things for operational needs. The engineers that we use are the same engineers that NDOT has used on projects such as Reno SVX and relied upon, as well as Project Neon heavily for many, many years, and understanding that. And then these inadmissible deviations supposedly would create some reevaluation of the NEPA or the environmental document. Once notified of that, we brought that back to our engineers, who again are the ones that NDOT relied on many of these larger projects. And we were assured that these were not any issues or deviations that would require such a thing. They were innovations of uniqueness, but stayed within the footprint of the right-of-way and operate the same and/or, if not better, than what NDOT's first plan layout was. Anyway, subsequent to that, we heard that FHWA was asked about it, but frankly, with all due respect, you can get a response from anybody based on how you ask the question. And since it's a one-sided question, you get the same answer that you're hoping for. That's all. That would be an environmental. Now, as of last Friday at 1:30, we received notification from the department that the selected proposer, or who the selected proposer would be, and in this particular case was with Key. Very qualified organization, very good organization, and frankly, Ames, the other proposer, as well as ourselves, all are qualified and able to do this particular project. However, in the review of it, we find, and as I think the department knows, our proposal was $228 million, right at the engineer's estimate. And with and knowing that when we proposed this during a one-on-one meeting, that our innovations were likely going to save $30+ million on this project. Now, prices are a little bit inflated, today, obviously with the COVID issues that are at hand, and that our price as well at 228 includes those type of issues. However, Ames was found to be second at $264 million. Hewitt's price at $305 million, significantly higher. The way the scoring goes, that was the price, and the technical side of that is so swayed that it changed it. Ames's proposal, very qualified contractor, doing the other SBX project in Reno currently, also did the one previous to that, which is Garnet Interchange down here in Las Vegas, and their proposal is found, and from a technical standpoint, to barely meet acceptance. Hewitt's, on the other hand, is rated so high, we've actually never seen numbers that high before, and congratulations to them if so. However, with the recommendation, combining the two together, making them the best proposer, I beg for your thoughts on reconsideration of that. This particular project, as the director brought up through her report, there's substantial funding shortfalls as it is today, many hundreds of millions of dollars. Tomorrow, likely in this room, she reported on AB 413's AWG group, and with board member Valentine will chair, which I will sit in on that as well, to try to find sustainable funding measures that will help do these projects. Clearly, in this particular case, this project can be done for something within the budget under some other form of delivery, which is design bid build, which if NDOT or any other public entity is not interested in innovations that can save money like this, then the design build process should not be used. Bid build clearly is the best way if you're just looking for low bid, competitive as it is. There's not any innovations, it's stuck with whoever you picked as your engineers, which is fine. We do work with them, not just us, the Ames, the Kiwas will work with any engineering company and the owners as follow up as on any project that we do. No project is perfect. And if this required a new reevaluation of the environmental document for something that stays within its footprint is minor, we saved one structure to save money and added another structure to help make this operationally better, we feel. Unfortunately, that's not the way the exact process goes. So it is a little bit sour grapes, and we're disturbed that the process does allow for scoring without disqualification. And it goes all the way to 0. And it's in the document that was shown or distributed by NDOT on Friday. If you didn't like our plan, then score us differently. We spent $1.5 million on this proposal. The stipend of $360,000 offsets some of it. It's really irrelevant though. It's still plus $1 million that we did on this particular proposal. We didn't propose objective project. Neon project, Garnet Interchange, we weren't selected for obvious reasons. Price, maybe it was scope in that, but we were evaluated appropriately. This is a travesty to spend these kinds of dollars just because of the process at hand. We had that happen at the Reno SBX, way over budget. It's just a trend that needs to be reevaluated on using the design build process.
Thank you, Mr. Roman. Kevin, are you up there for me, or do I have legal staff here? Who's my legal staff?
On our team.
I would like legal, just to go in executive session if there's any discussion of this.
Governor, in Carson City, Dennis Gallagher, counsel for the board.
Dennis, I need to go in executive session to discuss these comments, not to deliberate, but just to discuss them.
For the record, Dennis Gallagher, no discussion of the comments is permitted. Deliberation and action is not.
Okay. I'm just going on discussion then, if I could briefly, because I don't know if everybody's familiar with this project. How far are we over the potential engineer's estimate on this project? Do we have an idea?
Governor, thank you for your question. I am going to defer to Nick Johnson, our Chief of Project Management, The numbers were not shared with me as part of the process with the scoring. And so, Nick, can you please?
What was the engineer's estimate, Nick?
Good morning, Governor. For the record, Nick Johnson, Project Management. Our high end of the estimate, we continually updated through the process. And so I think the last estimate that we had was right around between $260 and $280 million. Now, in our posted, the last time we posted in the RFP during the pyramid, I'd have to go back and look, but I think the high end was right around 225 or 230, but we've continually updated that with the increase in materials here throughout the process.
Okay. So the increase came as a result of material costs?
Yes, Governor, on our end, with our estimate, we've been trying to keep close tabs on that, so that is correct.
Okay. Okay, and I don't know where the whole board is on this, but I can tell you I've spent 3 years now almost as governor on this one and 10 years on the county commission with bid protests that are, you know, these are difficult because you certainly want to be fair to everybody involved. Yet at the same time, we want to save as much taxpayer money as we can because it's not, you know, we're extending out our budget further and further and further on this, you know, the more money we save. Is there a sense from the NDOT team that this process works or doesn't work, or?
Thank you, Governor. The design build process is to ensure the best value for the project, and cost is one of the considerations, as both Mr. Wellman mentioned it and as the board knows. But we also look at the innovations that are being delivered and how well the project will be able to deliver the intended outcomes overall. Some of the other things we consider is construction schedule, impacts to the adjacent property owners. In this case, we have several very high-end stakeholders, all of the resorts that are right there on the corner. So we look at all of those things in order to determine the best value. And again, really be stewards of the state highway fund. That is something that we do think about, but it is in context of how we can deliver the project overall.
Did the industry, and maybe this is for my colleague to my right here, weigh in on the benefits or detractions of this design versus the other one versus Cuba?
They were not able to look at the direct proposals. The proposals that are submitted through the design build are scored with our team, scores them and looks at the innovations. One of the reasons why we have the process, as was mentioned, the one-on-ones, is to review alternative technical concepts to ensure that they align with what the stakeholders have agreed to during the NEPA process. So the stakeholders are closely involved in the NEPA process to ensure that we're maintaining all of the access points. They're aware if we're closing access, if we're adding access, if we're impeding view sheds, those sorts of things. And they're also aware of the construction impacts. When we review the proposals, we review them in light of the agreements that the stakeholders have made along the way.
Okay. Anybody have any comments or questions? Up north? Okay. Down here? Okay.
Governor, can I tell you the path forward?
Please, yeah.
The path forward on the project at this point is we will announce the notice of intent to award at our September board meeting with the vote at the October board meeting. So that is our path on this project.
Okay, and what is the, I know what it was at the county level in terms of formal protests and filing them and the whole deal. What is the path at the state level?
At this point, the protest was filed 2 weeks ago, I believe it was. We've reviewed the protest and formally responded to the protest, and it is now considered closed.
So now their only option is judicial?
As far as I know.
Okay. Any questions? Okay. Anyone else in Southern Nevada wishing to participate in public comment? Seeing none, we are adjourned. Thanks, everybody.